G'day folks, today we're going to be building some chain link fencing for your Warhammer 40k battlefield, and I'll show you the pro tips that I was shown many years ago. Before we dive in, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe to the video. We'd really appreciate it. Let's start by going over the tools we need for this project. So you need a pink drill, a box cutter, some side cutters, 2.8mm drill bit, a jar of budgie gravel, steel ruler, bamboo skewers, some door screen or window screen, some super low viscosity crazy glue, and some MDF board. So we're going to dive right into construction by cutting our MDF down into 1cm strips. You'll notice I score the MDF about 10 times before I try and break it off, and if you score it properly, it'll crack off nice and cleanly. So we measure out 1cm wide. We're going to cut a whole schwack of these strips, and in total we'll get about 3 meters worth of fencing. And once the strips are cut, then we're going to sand them all down, make them nice and pretty for the next stage. So next up, we're going to figure out where our fence posts are going to go. So I've put them about 4.5 centimeters apart across all the fence lines. So you just mark out 4.5 centimeter dots, and then you take your fancy pink drill and drill out all the fence post holes you just marked. And once all those holes are drilled, you take your bamboo skewers, mark them up how tall you want your fence post to be, and then just cut up a whole schwack of fence posts. I think I need about 120 to do all 15 fence lines. Now that all the fence lines have their holes drilled, we're going to pound the fence posts into the fence line. And you'll notice I work on glass, so you can't very well pound on glass, so you'll see me pounding the fence posts in on the frame of the desk. The only thing you're going to want to watch for here is to make sure the fence posts get pounded in straight. So after you pound them in, you just take a look at them and make sure they're straight, and you're ready for the next step. So now we're going to base our fence lines here, and I use a 50-50 mix of water and PVA glue. And we've all done this thousands of times with our miniatures. You just mix up some glue and paint it on the base, and then you dip your model into a substrate tray, pour some substrate over it, shake off the excess, and Bob's your uncle. So when the basing is dry, you take your stuff outside to a good ventilated area and give it a good decent coat of black spray paint from a rattle can. Now that the primer's dried, we're going to put down a base coat of color onto the fence lines. I'm after a grassy effect, so I'm using a dark green watered down artist paint mix. Nice and sloppy painting, real easy to do. Turn up the music in the background and just have fun at it. Once that's dry, we're going to dry brush our first accent color, lime green on top of that, a little bit lighter than the dark green, of course. And we've all dry brushed a lot, so just keep dry brushing until you're done. And the last accent color we're going to put on is a nice bright yellow, which will really make things pop. This next part is a real secret sauce, what I call the Triscuit maneuver. You take your screen, which are squares, and you turn them on a 45-degree angle before you cut them, and that turns the squares into diamonds, which looks like chain linked fence. So now that we've got a nice inventory of screen ready to be mounted to our fence posts, we're going to start mounting. So you want to start by gluing one end of the fence line first. You'll see why in a minute or so. So I use super low viscosity crazy glue to do that. So I put the fence in line up against the fence post, and I'll tamp it down with a steel ruler just to make sure I get a nice snug fit. And if you get crazy glue on the steel ruler, don't worry, it cracks off nice and easily for cleanup. So once that one side is done and dried, you flip it over, and you want to stretch the chain link fence just a little bit so there's a nice snug fit to all the fence posts, and glue that down. And then you want to glue the middle fence posts, and you'll see I use a ruler and a little wee screwdriver just for a little bit of weight to keep it attached to the fence posts. And take it off, and there you go, you've got a fence line. So with all of our screen glued onto the fence posts, we're going to snip off the ends of the fence line where the screen may have overhung a bit, so we want a nice straight edge finish. And then once that's done, we're going to start putting some color on the fencing. So I use a gunmetal gray. You want bolt gunmetal in Citadel color terms. And nice light dry brush across the screen itself as well as the fence post. You want to do both sides. We're going to dirty it up later on, so you just want a little bit of a metallic sheen to it at this point. So we're going to paint up a bunch more bamboo skewers in preparation for adding the cross member, the top cross member, to the fence lines. And they're purposefully not cut to length at this point for reasons you'll see when we go to install them. So you just paint up a bunch of them flat black and then dry brush them bolt gun metal again. And we'll be ready to install the cross members. So we're ready to install the top cross members now on all our fence lines. And the reason why we don't just cut a whole bunch of bamboo skewers to the same length is because MDF board can warp when used with PVA glue. PVA glue shrinks when it dries, which sometimes is strong enough to warp the MDF board that everything's mounted on. So this is our chance to fix that warping if any exists. So each cross member is measured individually, and it should be a nice snug fit in between the fence posts now. And we're going to sand off each of the sides so we got a nice solid fit between the fence posts. And I don't glue them right away. I put in all the cross members and they're nice snug fits. They don't go anywhere. And that gives me a chance to assess, make sure everything's leveled out. There's no more warping. Once I'm satisfied, I just add a drop of crazy glue to each of the top of the fence posts, and these things are solid as a rock. So with our cross members installed, you pull out some Vallejo rust ink, water it down, and liberally douse the fence lines with it. You may have to blow out any mesh holes that have filled up with the ink easily enough. Just blow onto them and that'll clear it up. Next up, we're going to add some foliage to our fence lines. I use reindeer moss, a nice type of lichen that you can get from just about any craft store, and it stands the test of time as well. So you just draw out a bead of hot glue and use a little pokey stick to poke the reindeer moss onto the hot glue. Now, the stick just prevents you from burning your fingers too much and getting too much glue stuck to your fingers. You want to randomize as much as possible. You want, like, some fence lines will have no foliage, some fence lines will have a lot. And everywhere in between. So you just lather, rinse, repeat until all your fence lines have the foliage you like. So you're going to want to trim the reindeer moss from the fence lines now. You don't want them all too bushy where they snag on everything in gameplay. So you're just going to take a tiny pair of scissors and snip off all the excess, and you'll probably trim off about half as much reindeer moss as you put on in the first place, but that's fine. Just throw it back in your reindeer moss box. No self-respecting Warhammer 40k terrain piece would be complete without propaganda posters. So download your favorite posters, print them out, and cut them up into nice small shapes. We're going to add them to the fence with normal PVA glue. The size that we use for this application here is about 3/4 of a centimeter tall by about 1/2 centimeter wide. I think one or two of them are a little wider than that. But get them all cut out, and then they're ready for gluing. One of the pro tips I was taught years ago is how to finish paper and cardstock images before you put them on the model. Using paper and cardstock, sometimes you'll get that white, real thin white edge around the edge of the printout, and that can take away from the look of the final model. So you just take some ink, really watered down brown ink, and paint the back and the sides of the cardstock and paper stock that you're about to mount. And gives it a real nice weathered look, and you don't see that bold white flash of white on the sides of the paper. And we're clearly in the home stretch now. We just got to add our posters to the fence line. And just use a little dollop of PVA glue on the back of the poster. Put it on. I use tweezers to make it a little easier. You might have to manhandle the poster a bit just to prevent it from warping when it dries. And it'll take a lot for these to come off. And the very last step in our process, take your fences outside, give them a nice clear coat, give them a nice durable finish for gameplay. And that's how you do that. We ended up with about 3 meters worth of chain link fence for our 40k battle tables. Thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The Emperor wishes you a lovely day.